Morning, everyone. Beautiful morning. I'm still getting used to all the light in this church, and it's just beautiful how the sun comes in the morning, and then on Saturday nights it comes in that way. It's just beautiful. Do you believe in miracles? A miracle is a surprising and welcome event that can't be accounted for by natural or scientific laws and is attributed to God. Ever had a miracle in your life? I've had at least two events that I consider to be miracles. When my father was about 60, unfortunately, he got cancer of the bowel, and that was removed. And then 3 years later, the cancer returned to his lungs. And at that point, we had to face the fact that this might be a terminal illness for my father. He decided to try to get the tumor taken out of his lung, and at that point he was a deacon in his church, and he went to the board of deacons and asked them to pray over him for healing for the success of his surgery. So the deacons prayed over him, and he told me that it felt like electricity going from the soles of his feet to the tip of his head, and he wondered what that meant. His lung was operated on, and thanks be to God, the cancer never came back. He died of another unrelated cancer about 17 years later. I prayed really hard. I prayed to St. Joseph that there would be a miracle, and we were grateful to God that he gave us another 17 years with my dad. My mother passed away, sadly, in September of last year. And that was another miracle, I believe, because my family's very spread out. I have a brother in Vancouver, a sister in Winnipeg, and I live here in Dartmouth. And my mother was in a nursing home in Winnipeg, and for about 2 years I hadn't been able to see her because of COVID. Well, last year the COVID regulations relaxed a bit, and we were able to organize a visit with my mother in Winnipeg in September of last year. Now, this visit was organized about, I think, 2 or 3 months earlier. And so we, the three children, all came to Mom to see her in the nursing home. And suddenly her health began to fade. And we couldn't believe it at first, but the signs were all there that she was passing on to be with the Lord. And my sister called my brother and I, because she was there for the night, and we arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. We spent 2 hours with my mother, and she passed away at 6. She passed away with her 3 children there, all of us holding hands and praying. I bowed my head to pray the Our Father. When I looked up, she had breathed her last breath. So I believe that that was the grace of God, allowing us the grace to be able to be there with her mom at her last moments. Now, there is a scientific explanation for both of those events, right? It is statistically possible that those two things could have happened, but I believe it is unlikely. On the other hand, the Catholic Church is in the business of tracking and verifying miracles for which there is no scientific explanation. Each official miracle must go through rigorous scrutiny by medical, theological, and scientific experts before it is approved. And this happens for each canonization of a saint, because for saints that are not martyrs, they have to have at least 2 miracles. And there must be a direct connection between prayer to this individual who is seeking to become a saint, or to God, and the miracle. The story of the canonization of St. Kateri Tekakwitha provides us with a recent example of a miracle that was approved by the church. St. Kateri was a young Algonquin Mohawk woman born in 1656 in the area now known as upstate New York. Despite a very difficult life and many challenges, she was baptized into the Catholic Church, dying in Kanawake, a village on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River across from Montreal, at the age of 24. She was beatified in 1980 and canonized in 2012 by Pope Benedict. Now, the canonization came about because of the following miracle. In 2006, a young boy, he was only kindergarten age, fell ill. He was playing basketball and he fell down and cut his lip on the the bottom of the basketball net. And that got infected and he got flesh-eating disease. And that began to take away the flesh in his lip and in his face, and it spread to his body. And his family was very, very concerned about his well-being. It led to him being admitted to hospital. He was there for 9 weeks in total, and during that time, several times, the doctors came to the boy's family to indicate that they didn't think he was going to make it. There was a particular 2-week period where every day for 2 weeks they operated on him to remove some of the diseased flesh, and at night put him in a hyperbaric chamber to provide increased pressure to try to slow the progression of the disease. He himself and his family were of First Nations heritage. The boy's name was Jake Finkbonner. Well, after a while, his parish priest came and gave him the anointing of the sick, and their parish was a First Nations parish, and so the pastor suggested to the family that they ask for the intercession of Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha to provide a miraculous healing. And that same day, they invited a nun whose name was also Kateri, Sister Kateri Mitchell, to come and visit Jake in the hospital. She did, and when she did, she brought a relic of St. Kateri Tekakwitha, which was a piece of her bones, and she placed that relic on the flesh of Jake. They prayed for healing, and the next day the miracle happened. The disease stopped its progression, and Jake was eventually cured. Now, little Jake has had a series of plastic surgeries to correct the ravages of the disease. I saw a picture of him, and he looks like quite a normal young man. Both his medical team and the medical experts at the Vatican all said that the medical treatment did not cure the disease. It was, in fact, a miracle. And Jake and his parents attended the canonization of St. Kateri in Rome on October 21st, 2012. Now, this is only one of the hundreds of miracles that have been approved by the Church as part of the canonization process. And in addition, we know that other healings have taken place at various shrines around the world. For instance, many of you probably know about the fact that St. Bernadette Soubirous in 1858 had a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Lourdes, France, and the Blessed Virgin showed Bernadette where to dig, and there was a source of water there, and that water still flows in Lourdes today and has been a source of healing for many people. More than 7,000 people have attributed healings to the water at Lourdes. And of those 7,000, 70 have been officially approved by the Church after strict scientific and medical scrutiny. Now, my wife, who is a doctor, wanted me to emphasize the fact that this is strict medical scrutiny. When we were in Lourdes, Linda, being a doctor, went through the protocols, and she was really surprised at how strict they were about these miracles. Now, sadly, we're living in a time of skepticism about the claims of Christianity. This has even spread among some theologians who question the basic beliefs of the faith. We are more influenced than we realize by the media and a culture that virtually avoids the spiritual, supernatural, or other worldly aspects of life. Worse yet, the media can be actively critical of the practice of the faith. We often turn a large portion of our leisure time over to media, which can unconsciously condition us to be so focused on the material world that we have no time for the spiritual. Sometimes I fear we've lost the ability to imagine anything for ourselves. It's like we've turned our imagination over to entertainment media, let alone imagine how God is working in our world. Then in the midst of all this is St. Kateri, the lily of the Mohawks, whose bright light of faith in an otherwise tragic life brought hope and healing for a little First Nations boy and his family 350 years after her birth. And thousands of other stories that remind us that God is still present and working miracles in our midst. We must never forget that it was Jesus' miracle, and they'd accomplished it through St. Kateri. But this is but one of a long line of miracles that started in this reading today at the wedding at Cana, where Jesus performed this first miracle and continues this process of reaching into our world down to the present day. This is all part of God's master plan for salvation for the nations, but in this case, he collaborated with Kateri to bring about his plan. What today's gospel story demonstrates is that God has a son who took on human flesh without losing his divine nature, who walked on the earth, and who cares about humanity so much that he changed water into wine at a wedding reception at his mother's request. This is the God we believe in. This is the God who was there at the wedding based on his mother's request, and this is the God who is there for us based on our request today. We need to contemplate the closeness of God and the miracles of God to allow it to sink in, because it has real implications for our lives and how we live day to day. It certainly had implications for Jake and his family. This first miracle is a manifestation of the power of Jesus Christ as God at work in the world. Jake's miracle means that the love hasn't stopped. Not one little bit. So how will we respond? Well, we can get weighed down today, can't we? I certainly do. And sometimes our vision cannot rise above the latest COVID numbers, or stories of failed political or church leadership, or crime in the streets, or the latest Hollywood relationship breakup, or the latest sale at Best Buy. But can we just turn all that off for half an hour maybe, and go to Wikipedia and read a story about the lives of one of the saints to see how God is working in our world? And can we thank God as we nod off to sleep at night for being active in our lives and for giving us hope? That stuff on the TV or the iPad or your phone can't bring you new life or peace or joy like God can. And when we receive the Eucharist today, can we see the ultimate miracle? Jesus Christ, the only Son of God, living and active, body and blood, soul and divinity, present in the Eucharist in a real way. And if we can't see it, then can we ask Jesus to open our hearts to be part of the miracle of his living presence? Let's be skeptics no more. Let's believe in miracles.